same group of friends to make this second trip. But this time it was in the middle of the week. And lo and behold, when it came close to the time to depart, we found out that none of our friends could make it. Worked weeknight. So Pearl says, boy, I don't think I want to go out there all alone. I said, oh, don't be ridiculous, dear. I said, we obtained this information off radio, KVEG, clear in Santa Monica, being broadcast from Las Vegas. I said, there are people all over the western states that are hearing this. We have a tangential interest in UFOs at this point. Think of the people that have a voracious interest in the subject. You're going to have people going out there from all over, and I'm sure the word is spreading to other countries of the world. You'll probably have people out there from Australia and Europe and all over the map, to say nothing of the people from Las Vegas, close by. I said, there could be scores, even hundreds of people out there. Don't be ridiculous. So we went out there. We were all alone. I was actually outraged. Well, anyway, we got out there, and I believe we arrived around 3:30 at the mailbox, and we decided to go to the Little Alien for dinner. And we came back and got to the mailbox by about 5:30. It was dusk and beginning to get dark. Wednesday, February 28, 1990. And I got out my lawn chair, and suddenly at 7:30, the first craft came up, and I was astounded. I leaped out of my lawn chair, had a camera around my neck, my 35 millimeter point and shoot camera, Nikon Action Touch, and I took a couple of shots. And then we actually, about every 45 minutes, a craft would come up one at a time. We saw 6 craft that night, each one in succession. And it was craft number about 2 or 3 that was the most dramatic. That is, it was the one that came the closest, and I took a photograph of it. What we actually saw, Michael, was a craft that was ellipsoidal in shape. It was pulsating brightly, and while we couldn't see the outline of the craft, the strict outline, we saw this very brightly pulsating ellipsoid. And when I snapped some shots, apparently the camera, with its low-end optics, that is, we didn't have a huge magnifying lens, so it didn't bring the craft in so close that it would have appeared as a giant blur of light. So, plus, it must have caught the craft in a trough of its pulse, because the photograph captured the craft beautifully. That is the outline of it. So it was just a fluke of being at the right place at the right time and having the right optical setup.
Going to Bloom Lake, Area 51. What happened to you on this night?
Well, on that night, February the 21st, 1990, I accompanied a crew from Nippon Television Network to witness a test flight of an object over Groom Lake, which is known as Area 51. We arrived at the site around just after sundown because, according to the information given to us on that same day when we visited Mr. Lazar at his residence, he said that if you go there after sundown and stand near the mailbox area of Highway 375, looking south towards Groom Mountains and also to the Jumble Hills, you will see test flight of these objects. And lo and behold, when we arrived at the scene, exactly around 6:45 or so, we started seeing, and we suddenly started seeing an orangish, yellowish light suddenly appear on top of Jumbled Hills, making a motion to the right for about 15 seconds or so. Next, exactly at 8:15 p.m., we had another sighting of the same object that suddenly appeared on top of Jumbled Hills, came up above the hills, and made its appearance, went slightly to the right side, and at that juncture in time, it made a sudden descension and a back turn. which I estimated to be possibly about 5,000 feet sudden descension, a back-turn descension. And I had never seen anything like that in my life ever. And it is definitely a test flight of highly unusual object, a demonstration of technology, a propulsion system so exotic right now that we don't know what it was, but it was being tested at that very night.
Well, I've become probably the expert on Area 51 in the United States since February 26th of 1991, which was my first trip out to Area 51. On that trip, I got as close as I have ever gotten to a flying saucer. It was the first time I'd ever seen a UFO, actually. I was traveling in a car with my friend down the road, and a very large object flashed over the car and then began to float probably about a mile away from us in the open desert. We got out of the car, ran towards the object, and got within a few hundred yards of a large disc-shaped object about 40 feet in diameter that looked like a saucer with a teacup on the top of it. It glowed a brilliant reddish-orange color and then glowed a real bright yellow color. On one occasion, we thought that the object was actually going to explode because it glowed so brilliantly. It would shoot up to about 200 feet in the air, make a falling leaf motion back and forth, and then go back down onto the ground. This object was amazing. I was so excited because I'd never seen anything before like this ever in my life. We got our faces burned. We had a mild case of radiation poisoning after that. We had fevers for 3 or 4 days of about 102, 103 degrees, which we felt was radiation poisoning. And since then, I've been out to the Area 51 area probably some 40, 50 times or so, and have taken quite literally hundreds of people out there.
We had gone to a place called Rachel, where there was supposed to have been this gathering of people, one of which I had heard on the radio in Los Angeles, and that's what seems so intriguing. We passed this large group of people in the middle of nowhere out in the desert. There was a tour bus and probably 24 cars or so, just in the middle of nowhere, total darkness. We went on by them and went into Rachel. We stayed there for about 45 minutes, just listening to the conversation going on, and decided that the place to be was probably the group of people that we had passed about 15 miles back. We went there and sat and began watching like it seemed everyone else was doing, and then we had the first actual sighting.
I looked up in the sky, and I thought there was a really bright star up there, and I said, "John, is that star kind of moving?" And right about the same time I saw that, and he goes, "Yeah, I think it is." And right about that time, it just like a falling star dropped out of the sky, and just came straight down to right above a mountain range that was about 5 miles away from us, and just stopped there and hovered, and then moved around the mountains a little bit, making various maneuvers that no aircraft could possibly make. And then it just stopped, and then it lowered itself down below the mountains out of view. And that was the first of many weird things we saw that night. And the people on the bus were there at that time. They got all applauded like, "Oh, there was a sighting," and it was getting late. It was about it was not even quite midnight then. And so they all kind of applauded and said, "Well, that's there," and they all got in the bus and left.
Did you recognize any details?
Not at that time.
Not at that time.
That particular sighting was completely on the other side of this large valley that was at least 15, 20 miles across, at the point at where we saw it come down and float across the valley.
Yeah.
The most dramatic thing that happened that evening was after a large number of the people had left, including the tour bus. It was down to 3 cars, and we were sitting in the middle of these 3 cars and had been watching a light maneuvering kind of wildly out on the other side of the valley, and were just intrigued as it came straight toward us, as if it was singling out Jeff and I in particular.
Yeah.
From this immense distance away in a straight line, and there was a car on the other side, on our right side, that had the dome light on, and they were making sandwiches.